listeners, we are back with season 3 of Life is Better with You in It, and I'm your host, Jen Kramer, and we're going to bring on guests this season who are something else. And so something else is a positive thing, right? It means that you are really passionate about what you do. You are either like driving business change or you're pursuing your passion. And so we want to bring on some really awesome people this season who emulate that. And one of my friends, Alexis, is here to join us today on the podcast. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. I'm so excited to be talking with you. I've loved our conversation so far, and I'm excited to talk with you today.
Awesome. Excellent. So, Alexis, tell us maybe a little bit about you, what you do in your day job, and maybe like a little bit about your business background.
Yeah, so I am co-founder of Aura Marketing, and we basically have a marketing agency specifically for recruiters. We have some peripheral clients, but mainly recruiters. And we work to create all of their organic content for them in order to generate leads for their business. So we discovered this model where we basically can create all of their month's content for them in just an hour of their time a month, authentically them. So videos of them, posts, graphics, articles, PDFs, no generic AI stuff, to really build connection with their audience and generate leads and grow their business. So I'm partnered with Donnie Gupton, who I worked with in the past, and that's what we do for our clients. So it's a total joy, truly, every day, because we get to help clients develop their brand, but get themselves out there. And there's nothing better to me than to be authentically able to do that with and for people.
Yeah, I think that social media is never going away. And so, as business owners and as people, I think you have to try to figure out how you can show up authentically online, because I don't think everything is all rainbows and sunshine, right? You meet people out in the real life. Everyone's got real things going on, real problems, real good things too, but also having real life issues go on. And so, I've always been someone who has wanted to strive to show up authentically. So if you were to approach me or see me in person, you would hopefully see the same person that you would online, right? I'm typically probably going to be holding a Diet Coke, maybe a glass of wine, maybe a Starbucks. But at least I'm, trying to do life with people. And so I love this niche that you found in video. How did you kind of come about that, and where did you see that business need, right? Because I think, when you show up on LinkedIn, sometimes it can be very stuffy, or come from a place of like, oh, I don't have those problems, right? Because sometimes we see people post and it's like, well, you probably don't have kids and you can keep these kind of habits, or you can keep this kind of stuff when you post about it, and they don't post the whole thing. So how did you come upon this niche, and maybe how can our listeners show up authentically online?
So first question about how we came up with this niche was birthed from the exactly like what you said, is that most people don't have the time. If you're a recruiter, you're going to be great at recruiting. You're not a marketer. And like, why as business owners, I mean, you know this, why are we expected to know how to do everything and like be everything and take away from the things that we really value? I think for you and I, like our passions, being parents, like those things are so important to us. And the more we try to do things that are not in our area of expertise, it takes us away from the things that we really value, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it was about saving people time, but also being able to show up authentically. My business partner, I mentioned, Donnie Gupton, he's been a coach for recruiters for years, and he empowers people and teaches them how to do this. But ultimately, the problem was they still don't have the time. And while they can gain some skills, the time, and then you start getting into the mindsets of like self-doubt. Is this right for LinkedIn? Should it not be? I don't know the strategy. Is this too long? Is it too short? The video part, the technology part of all of the things, right? It's like everything gets in your way and gets in your head. So maybe you can like do a month-long streak and you've like done it, but if you don't quote unquote see results right away, it gets discouraging, and it falls by the wayside until you like your next wave of inspiration to take it on because you see everybody else doing it. So that was really, we wanted to give people their time back, but also help them see results. The other thing is, I think it's very easy to look at any social platform and feel like that's the way I need to be doing it, or that's the way I should be doing it. And that's not right. We have a framework that we use, but everything is tailored to the person. For example, for years, my children wanted nothing to do with my social media and my brand. And I totally respected that. So I didn't talk about being a mother. I didn't talk about my kids. That was like not what they wanted, in at their time in your life. And then they
Yeah.
grew up and then realized, yeah, we don't care. And so now that is more of a part of what I do. But it's not all about like telling sobs or inspirational stories, or like it's about designing things the way that you want to, because of like what you said. You want people to meet you and feel like they know who you are or have an introduction to who you are. Great content should be an experience of what it's like to work with you and know you, so that when they hop on a call with you, when you start working with them, they already feel like they know what to expect.
Mm,
So I'd say that's how we got into it. um, so I would say for listeners, like I'll give you the framework that we use for our clients. Like ultimately, you want to show up to lead your audience. So,
mm.
but this is where most people get stuck, because they
Where am I
stay
leading them? Yeah.
Yes, they stay on the lead. They share all the
Yeah.
things that they're doing great, all their success, but they keep it about the I. And it's I did this, I helped this, I do this. And like nobody wants to hear about that all the time. You need to show up in a way that you can lead your audience, but in a way that kind of puts the mirror on them to ultimately show them how you can support them. The other thing that they want to do, and that's where usually where brands stop and stuck. They sell in the lead. But
Mm,
we have a couple other pillars that we know really work. So the second one is to serve. You have to show up in a way to give value, to offer education, tips. And I think people get really weird about this because they feel like if I give things away, like it's proprietary, or like it's gonna
mm,
show. It's people get very selfish in this way. I say like throw that by the wayside and give generously and selflessly to the best of your ability. So
yeah.
that's what you want to do, show your value. And then the third pillar that your audience can work on is the connect. And this is kind of what we were talking about before. What are some ways that you can, it's not, and let me say this, I think that the trend has been to share something that you can connect with and relate it back to business. And like sometimes that works and
Yes.
sometimes so forced. Like
No.
you
And
just need
it's
to
like
relate, like,
this A and this B, they don't match. Like I don't even know the story anymore.
no, I know. And like the whole like, here's how my engagement is like the recruiting business. It's like
Mm,
sometimes that may work. That's fine. But like, how else can you really connect? Like, what's something you can share about yourself that invites conversation, dialogue, that maybe showcases your values? Or, like you mentioned, I do talk about cooking more on my Instagram page than my LinkedIn page. But like what that says about me is like my love of family, my Italian
mm,
roots, like
mhm.
the way I love is through food. So it shows more about me than just the surface thing. So we really encourage our clients to lead their audience, to serve them, and to connect.
So good. All right, listeners. So you heard it first from her. So you want to lead them somewhere, right? And don't think too hard about where you're leading them, but do it in a way that's authentic. You want to be able to serve them. I'm with you. I feel like the more information you give away, I mean, everybody can probably Google this. I don't know how much new
Right.
information we're coming up with, especially me as a recruiter. There's only so many ways that you can hire somebody
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
And I've always believed that interviews and hiring is just all about a good conversation anyway, so you get to know that person authentically. And then the last part she said was to connect. So what is something you're passionate about? For me, I love baking, but I don't think I can always bring baking to a conversation about recruiting. Like I don't know how that would always translate. I feel like sometimes it does because you think of it and you're like, oh, that's really good. Yeah, I'm gonna think about that next time, but
Right.
it may not be that genuine.
Yes.
Love that. Okay, listeners, you've got some homework. I'm reading this book and I'm going to pivot here to talk about this book that I've been reading. So it's a book from Morgan Housel. Have you heard of him?
Oh.
So he talks about there's one book that he wrote, which is called The Psychology of Money. And then there's another book that he wrote that is called Same as Ever. So it
Mm.
talks about a lot of things in business and in life that there are a lot of things that change, but there are some things that always remain the same. And so he talks about storytelling. And so I feel like when you are working with your clients, and even when we are presenting ourselves online, we're telling a story about who we are and how we present ourselves, right? And so he always says the best story wins. And that's how it goes, right? And so he talks about Titanic and how Titanic has all these stories behind it because there were survivors, but there were other shipwrecks that lost tons of more people, double, but no one ever heard anything about it because they lost everyone and there was not a lot of stories that were told. And so, do you help your listener or your clients, write stories, build stories, talk about their personal experience? Talk to me about storytelling as a brand presence online, and talk to our listeners about that.
Yeah. Storytelling is so important, and not everybody's, I mean, I will admittedly say I'm like the worst storyteller. Like if I'm at a party and it's time to tell a story, my family's like, no, we'll take it from here. Like it's not that you have to be great at telling stories. I think it's about recognizing that everybody has a story to
Mhm,
tell, right? So yes, I mean, that's something that we actually do with our clients. So one of the things that we do, which is one of my favorite parts of so in the hour that we create content with our clients, it's me and the client. We're having a video session, we're recording video. The last 15 minutes or so, we record, but it's really only conversational and it's about listening to their stories. So I'm interviewing, I'm asking for questions. And it's, I think storytelling is often about giving somebody space to like
mhm,
speak and to really listen, because nobody's going to tell a story if nobody's listening, right?
yeah,
So there's this exchange in storytelling that's about giving an opportunity and listening at the same time. So that is one of my favorite things to do. And then we take those words that they say and help them create posts, and they can add photos to create that connection. But storytelling is so important. And when you give sometimes, oftentimes in those hours I'm like, start, and they're like, well, I don't, nothing's been going on, I don't have anything to say. But when you can really give someone the opportunity to where you're willing to listen and ask some questions, there really is beautiful and powerful things that come from that time.
yeah. When you talk about stories and how you help your clients show up authentically, was there something in your like previous work life that you felt like was inauthentic, or is that something that you value and you value being authentic, value being honest, right? You're raising girls, you're raising the next gen, and so you probably think about how they're being honest, right? Even this morning, my youngest, I was like, "So how long did you read for on your chore list?" And he's like, 10 minutes. I was like, "Are you sure? Because I've been getting ready for 5." And he's like, "Okay, 5." I'm like, "Honey, the truth's faster. Like, we value the truth here." So, was there something that like kind of struck for you? Because I feel like you are authentic. I have had conversations with you off of the podcast, and then, even on it now, I feel like you're super genuine and authentic. So, was there something that was like an aha moment where like that's kind of your word or your shtick that you use?
It's an interesting question. I would say that a couple things, and a couple different sides, but I was a high school teacher for 10 years. And in regards to storytelling, like I could be the best teacher that
Mhm.
I wanted to. I mean, I worked very hard at great test scores, all of the things, having my kids
All
do
the
well.
things.
But
Yes.
like nobody cared about that compared to how they felt when they were around in my class, right? Um, and I feel like the most important part of what I did and the impact I had was just accompanying people and listening. Like truly, I could throw the education to the wayside.
Wow.
But like it had to do with accompanying and listening. And especially in teenage years, like they just wanted to be heard and listened to.
Mhm.
And so having the space to do that, and I'm talking about the other end of the storytelling, I understand, but I just think that that was so important. I mean, to really listen and accompany and to authentically be able to be there for other
Mm,
people and not just perform. And I would say that like on the flip, so that's been a huge part for me. And in
mm,
regards to like myself, um, I don't know, it probably has to do with the fact that I mean, I want people to feel and know exactly who I am. Like, it's just a moral code. I don't know how else to say
yeah.
it other than that. Like, and I think, being raised a girl and, there's so many times in your own development that's very hard to do. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
and yeah, that does have to do with raising girls. Like, I want them to know I have 3 daughters. They're 20, 18, and 16 now. And I want them to know that I am who I say that I am. And that's something I do talk about. I don't want the woman that I am professionally in my friendships. Like I would never do anything that or say anything that I wouldn't do or say in front of my daughters. Like that's
Mm,
important for me to be who I say that I am so that they can trust me.
mm.
So yeah, it's moral code. It's who I show up as a wife and a mom, and yeah,
I
roundabout answer.
love that.
But
I
yeah.
no, I love it. I feel like there's not I don't know that there's enough genuineness and authentic in being someone who you say you are. I feel like that's old school, but I definitely we live by that in our house too, where, I want to approach my kids in the same way that I would approach someone at work, that I would approach the person at the grocery store, that I would approach someone who, is their teacher at school, and how they act as a kid and a student in school, and like respecting the teachers and what they offer, because I think that there's just so much opportunity there for teachers. So I love how you use kind of that as your baseline, and permeate it to like all the areas of your life, because I feel like there are a bunch of different areas where you show up on LinkedIn and you kind of have to have a little bit of like this presence about you and this education and knowledge, but then there's like this whole other side where you do want to be that person who you say you are with your kids, how you raise your kids, how they show up themselves online, because I don't know if online is ever going away, right? I mean, even my family's in Illinois, and so I get to stay connected with them because of social media too. A lot of times, we're sharing funny memes on Instagram or reels or whatever, and even just sharing pictures. So I think it's I feel like maybe more now than ever, we're talking a lot more about how we show up authentically online, because I don't think it's ever going to go away unless there's something like the metaverse or AI. I don't know. So let's transition a little bit to like AI, and maybe in terms of work, and if you use AI at all. Any tips for our listeners on if you use AI, what that's like? I know I use AI a little bit in some of the things that I do with clients.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would say semi frankly, if you're not using it, you're behind and should
Mhm.
be using it. So 100% I use it. We use it in our organization. I would say if the easiest tip for people in regards to content, I strongly suggest against using it for content ideas and posts. Like I want to write a post about um, how hiring managers can expedite their process. And you Google it,
Mm,
or I'm sorry, chat GPT, Gemini, whatever AI it,
yeah.
and then like that's noise. And that's like what has happened in the last year is that's how people are using it, and flooding, like the use of content has risen exponentially, but it's harder to cut through the noise because people are using it without giving people an experience of who they are. So I
Mhm.
think that ultimately that does much more harm for your brand than it does good. What I would suggest though, if you have an idea, like my favorite way that I recommend using it is if you have an idea to kind of draft it out, and you can use it as like an editor or cleaning it up,
Mhm.
or like, how can I better say this? Like that's using the support of what it is, but keeping you authentically at the root. Because
Yeah.
again, it's very easy to use it and think that it's doing something, but it's usually doing more harm if you are not at the root of it.
Oh, so I totally do some of that for my content posts, but some of the times too, I'm like, I think I'm saying this wrong. Can you make it easier? Can you
Yeah.
make this sound a little bit more succinct or get to the point? Because I feel like I'm not to the point.
Oh, I mean, there's so many deeper ways that you can use it. I love that idea. Like, how can I
Mhm,
simplify this? How can I make it more digestible for this audience and describe
mhm.
it in the audience? Like, again, that's utilizing a tool in a wise way, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, there's so many amazing things that you can do with it.
So use AI, but stray away from it from creating ideas. Maybe one thing that you can tell me about or tell our listeners about is maybe how you all get ideas, right? So you and I have talked previously about how, I get ideas. It's typically from not being here in my office. I'm typically out. I'm typically talking to someone in their real life, or I'm experiencing something about life. And I'm like, oh, I have this great idea. Or I just talked to a client and I'm like, oh, I need to share this because this must not be public knowledge. Do you have like this database of ideas, and maybe where do you go for ideas, and maybe where do you tell your clients to go for ideas for their own brand?
So we work with our clients to generate their ideas every month. So we have
Okay.
a collaborative session where I'm listening, and then I'm like, oh, let's take that and turn it into an idea. And I create like, okay, a list of things that they can talk about. So it's again rooted in them. So that's a part of our service, which is a huge value, kind of getting them
Yeah.
off their head and into their thing. But in regards to like your audience generating their ideas, I honestly think it's a very simple mindset shift because we don't think of our experiences as content often. We just think of an
Mm,
experience we've had. Like you may have had a conversation with a hiring manager and you're like thinking about it later, but you don't think of that as content often. You're just continuing to think about it. Or you're like, wow, that was a really interesting objection they brought up. Or like, God, that point, yeah. And like the value that I gave was really good, how I was able to help them focus on blah, 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 right?
mhm,
But we don't think of
mhm,
that like content. So if you just start shifting your mindset to like experiences can equal content, that's your content. Like
mhm,
you need to, like what I do is I keep a running like a notes on my phone. Every time that something comes into my head, I just dump it there. It doesn't mean I'm making content. How to create content, the flow is a different conversation, but like keep a running list. So just think of your experiences as content and
mm.
start creating some ideas from that. Cause that's the best kind of content.
Yeah. I've learned sometimes when you think that everybody knows something about a conversation that you have, you're like, well, if this person didn't know it and I know that they're super smart, maybe other people don't know. And then I'm like, okay, let me talk about it right now. And typically it's like from the car or like before
Absolutely.
I lose this thought, I better say
Yeah,
something.
absolutely.
Listeners, experience equals content or experiences equal content. So get out there and have some experiences, and then maybe even taking a few minutes after those calls that you have with your client or with a job seeker, right? For us, like when we talk about recruiting, to kind of think about what they said and maybe their objections or maybe points that they brought up. I've never taken time, I think, afterwards. Typically sometimes it will happen as they're saying it, so
Yeah.
maybe leaving
Yes.
some space for that will be good.
It's a great idea.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about kind of your business model, how you came to be. We've talked about like some of your core values, I think, that drive your business and, how it affects and permeates, the parenting life and the spouse life, because it's all really connected. I feel like for me it is.
Mhm.
I try to be, genuinely me here and then hopefully when I go to Raising Cane's later on.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about like this way of being unique and being something else. And so, this book that's coming out in October talks about being something else. And so basically, I mean, being something else is like sometimes I'm a little too loud. Sometimes I'm going to give my opinion, but I kind of have to like tone it down a little bit. Not everybody wants to hear my feedback, or, sometimes I probably shouldn't swear as much as I do. And so, how do you help your clients maybe be unique
Mm.
without being maybe something else or too much, or is there a time where you're like, hey, I think we can say it like this? Have you ever had to have those conversations, and are they something else?
Yeah, that's it. Yes, the answer is yes. We do have to have those conversations sometimes. I also have to have conversations with clients about it's okay to be you and say it the way you want to. I
Mm,
think a lot of people, the being something else isn't always about being too much. I actually find that it's often about being too not enough or not authentically them.
mm,
I think something in regards to content and putting yourself out there, the so if we're speaking specifically about that, the first reaction is to water down, actually, is to not be as honest, as bold, as, sometimes pushing the envelope. It's
mhm,
really about playing small. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is. And that's the something else that I have to often talk with people about. And that's, I actually feel the content creation that we create, the business that we help generate, it's fantastic. Like what we do is great, but I feel like the thing that I can never sell that happens is the way that we help clients grow in their confidence and ability to be who they are and show up to be that. So
mm,
I find it to be a little bit of the opposite. But yeah, I mean, and then yes, sometimes there's clients that like push the envelope a little too much, and we that's what we analyze. I mean,
mhm,
we're analyzing metrics, we're analyzing how do people respond? Like what are things that are happening? So we look at data and conversation and kind of mood, you know. And then there, you know, interestingly enough, Donnie and I are doing our podcast tomorrow on one of our clients who is very bold, like very bold in what she says and how she says it. And most of the time that's a really good thing. Sometimes it irks people, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's who she is. I mean, she really is authentically her. So yeah, but the something else for us is often, you know, kind of playing lower or smaller or watered down as opposed to the authentic version of who they are.
And so you're pushing them to be more something else. No, you really are something else. This is a good thing. People want to hear from you authentically.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that. I've never even thought that that was the thing because typically I will go way too hard in the paint.
No, most people, and especially, I mean, you've obviously had experience with creating content and putting yourself
Yeah.
out there. A lot
And
of
some of
people,
it doesn't land. And then some of the stuff you think is so good. I'm like, how did that not resonate with anyone?
exactly. And I mean, you're younger, so like you and your you know, I'm older than you, but I mean, we're used to a little bit more media and being out there, but a lot of the
Yeah.
clients we work with, this is like foreign territory, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Love it. All right, well, let's close out here for our listeners. If there are people who are maybe not in recruiting, but in a peripheral of, wanting to engage more with video content, tell us as listeners how we can reach you or maybe what website, and then obviously we'll share it in the links below.
Yes, so you can go to our website, it's auramarketing.us. You
Okay.
can check out our Instagram, which is the Aura Hour, and Aura being ORA, or you can check out my LinkedIn at Alexis Albright Meschi.
Awesome. All right.
You'll
Well, we
definitely have
will
to
put
put that in the comments because my last name is a tough one to spell.
Yes, yes, I will put all of it in the comments. I don't think I'm following along with you on Shame on Me on Instagram, so I will look you up for Aura Hour. And so, listeners, this has been a great conversation, just talking about being something else, putting yourself out there in an authentic way, and some tips and ideas, especially. You are always selling, right? I think no matter what job you're in, you are always selling, and you're selling your brand, right? I think people are buying from Elon Musk and the Teslas of the brand. So I feel like how you present yourself in a unique way is what sets you apart, is what helps you be something else. So go be something else today.